Hey guys, it's Soraya here. Welcome back to my channel. So today I have for you I guess they're like my recent, some of them are not recent reads that I've read that are super taboo that I have loved. Um, yeah, I think that's it. So let's go ahead and get started. So some of these books I have are ones that I own, and if I don't own them, I'll just like pop the picture up here. But so the first book I have is a manga series that I've loved. I started reading it right after the first one came out, and I've been reading them ever since. They only come out like once every 6 months or one every year, which is really sad, but it's okay because it's so good. And that is Coyote by Renmaru Zaraya. And this is hands down my favorite manga series that I've ever read. And I've read quite a few. And it follows a guy named Coyote who was orphaned very young. His mother died. He doesn't know who his father is. And he is taken in by this shifter pack. He himself is a shifter, but they call him Coyote because of the way he um, behaves, and he ends up kind of becoming obsessed with this piano player. And little does either one of them know that this piano player is actually part of a mafia family that is hell bent on killing all werewolves because they've been in a war for the last, I think, like 100 years or something like that. And it's so good. They don't start off knowing that they're supposed to be enemies, but it quickly takes a turn, and I love it because they don't want to like each other, but they like each other, and it's so good. I will say this is like male, and it is graphic, so I don't know if some people don't like that, whatever, but I just wanted to let you know. But it is, like I said, one of my favorite manga series I've ever read, and it's so good. It's so good. I love it so much. So the next one I have is a lot more taboo, and it is Hail by K. Webster. Now, I am not okay. It's hard to explain. So like I'm like 50-50 on whether or not I like K. Webster's books. Some of them are really good and I love them, like Hail, and then some of them are not so great and I hate them, like The Wild. But Hail was just a home run for me. It was actually the first K. Webster book I ever read, and I could not put it down. So this follows a brother and sister who recently lost their parents unexpectedly. The brother was off at college. He played baseball, and I think he got a baseball scholarship, if I remember correctly. And the sister was still at home with her parents. And I believe they died in like a car accident. And he comes home to take care of his sister and kind of like figure out what happens next. And they realize that the only two people that really understand the grief that they're going through is each other, and they kind of lean on each other. And this is not like an instant, oh, our parents died, so now we're going to hook up kind of story. And they didn't plan on um, developing a relationship. It took time to happen, and like they start off the story and they're like typical brother and sister where they really don't like each other, and as the story goes on they progressively realize, hey, I need you. And I know this is not like the best story, obviously it's a brother and sister, but the story, I don't know, somehow it like touched a piece of me. And I will say, I think this is the first brother and sister story that I've ever read. I'm pretty sure. I could be making that up though, because I read pretty dark books, but it just it just had a way of, I don't know, reaching my heartstrings. And it does go to some pretty dark places. The sister does suffer with like depression, and there's I think believe if I remember correctly, she tries to like commit suicide, and it just it's really good, I promise. And I'm not one who loves, well, no, I'm gonna lie and say I don't love super taboo books, but if I didn't love them, we would not be here. But uh, it just it just hits all the right spots. Next, I have one that I know a lot of people have read, and it quickly became one of my favorite series, and I literally binged through the whole series because it was so good, and that is The Initiation by Nikki Sloan. Now, this is the um, collab cover, um, but this book follows Maris, who has always been in love with Royce Hale, right? Yeah, Royce Hale, but her sister has become engaged to him until something happens and the sister no longer can marry Royce, and now Maris is set to marry Royce into the Hale family, and they're very powerful in this town. And there's also this mystery of what happens when someone is initiated into the board of Hale Banking and Holding. Um, and nobody really says like, hey, when you're initiated to the board, what happened? And you have this group of men who all get initiated, and you know something happens, but they don't really say, and it's so good. And also, I will have to say McAllister is probably one of my favorite characters ever. He's so manipulative and so calculating and so dirty in how he does things. And I get it because he's like win at all costs, but oh, it's so good. I love this book. I couldn't put it down. Oh, so next I have Untouchable by Sam Mariano. So last year was a year where I read a ton of Sam Mariano. I had never read her books before, and I just kind of fell down the rabbit hole and read a good deal of them. I think I ended up reading like 13 or so of her books last year because they were so good. And Untouchable is not the most um, liked of her books because of the hero, Carter Mahoney, but it quickly became one of my favorites. I think I just like an unlikable hero, and that's what happened to me. But anyway, I'll explain. So, Untouchable follows a girl named Zoe who was assaulted by one of the stars of the football team, and when she tells on him, her town kind of turns on her because they are a football town and they didn't appreciate her getting one of their players kicked off the team for the season, and so people kind of like shunned her, and she ends up being cornered by three of the guys on the football team, one of the ones who assaulted her, another one, and Carter. And um, Carter kind of pushes the envelope and he actually assaults her. And from then on, he's kind of obsessed with her in an odd, weird way. He is very persistent that they're going to be together and it's endgame, and she's never going to be with anybody else but him after that moment. And eventually that does happen. And I just love this story. I don't know how to explain it because he is definitely not a likable character. He does not really explain or apologize in any way for his actions. Um, it's pretty much, this is what I want, so this is how it's going to be. And I don't know, I just like that. And maybe that's just something with me, but it was just so good. It was so good. And it's a thick book. It's a pretty thick book. I don't even know how many pages this is. Almost 500 pages. But it was so good. I can't say anything else, but it was so good. And if you like an unlikable hero, you will like this. I promise. Okay, so speaking of unlikable heroes, I have another K. Webster book, and that is Coin. And Coin follows a man who, in the very beginning of the book, I will say trigger warnings for sexual assault and murder, because in the very beginning of the book, this man is assaulted and his family is murdered and assaulted sexually and physically and right in front of him. And from that point on, Coin decides he's forever out for revenge. He doesn't care who he has to go through to avenge his family. And so him and his brother kind of team up. His brother is an FBI agent, and they team up and go after all the men who killed his family. And he ends up finding out that it was a rival who hired these men to kill his family. And so he decides that he's going to take this rival's daughter and use her as a bargaining chip to get to him. And things don't necessarily go as planned, because the daughter actually hates her father and is willing to help him take her father down. But in the process, he ends up falling in love with her. And this one, okay, so it's age gap, and it's also taboo because the the way she gets into his head for him to accept her into a relationship. So Coin is very damaged. He's very traumatized. He has a lot of PTSD from what happened to him with his family. And I think this is also the part that a lot of people might not like about it, is that her use of daddy kink, I guess would be the way you would put it, is how she kind of gets into his head. So he, like, I don't want to tell you the story, but like one night he gets drunk and he gets upset with her, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna get rid of you, I'm done with you, this is done, over. And she doesn't want to go. She doesn't want him to get rid of her. And so she kind of manipulates him into like envisioning his daughter in her. And that's how she convinces him to stay. And I will say that I didn't love that aspect of it, but I did like the fact that, okay, when he woke up and he was sober again, he still wanted her, even though he knew she kind of manipulated him. It's hard to explain, but it is very good, and I did enjoy it, and I'm excited to read Copper. I still haven't read it yet. I do own it, but I just haven't read it yet. And the cliffhanger that this leaves you on, like if you read this, you will want to read Copper because it leaves you on a cliffhanger, and that one is just as taboo as this one, but I haven't read it yet, so I can't put it in here. But just so you know, it is pretty taboo. So there's Coin. Alright, so next I have Cherry Bomb, and like I said, this is the um, Hello Lovely box cover, but Cherry Bomb by Carmel Rhodes, and this one follows Cherry, who has had a pretty rough life. Her mom left when she was a kid, and it was just her sister, and her dad, ended up getting hooked on drugs, and he eventually got clean, but from that she kind of always stuck with, it's up to me to take care of everyone else. And then she's also dealing with the fact that her sister ended up betraying her and sleeping with her boyfriend. So Cherry kind of runs away to college to start over, and she ends up running into Cash at the restaurant that she works at and quickly develops feelings for him. And Cash is an older guy who is trying to fix the relationship with the daughter that he didn't know he had until recently. And so things kind of progress from there. Basically, this is a daughter's best friend romance. So she's having a relationship with her best friend's dad. It's really good. You have to read it. Um, I cried when I read this, and I did not think that was going to happen. And once you read it, you'll kind of get why I cried. But it was so good. I read it over a day. I think it only took me a day. I'm pretty sure. And it's not that long. It's like 100, 200 pages, but it just, I don't know. It pulled more emotions out of me than I thought it would, and I think that it's because I kind of see myself in Cherry a lot, and a lot of her like hang-ups and problems and tastes kind of are very similar to mine in a way where sometimes they can be almost self-destructive, and not to her extent am I that self-destructive, but I do see why she was the way she was, and I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. But it was so good. Please pick it up. So next I have Her Soul to Take by Harley LaRue, and this one ended up being one of my favorite books of last year. This is a this follows a girl who moves back to her hometown to spend like her last year in her family's cottage before they sell it because it's nostalgic for her. And she ends up moving back to this town not knowing all the history behind why her family left and why this town is so odd. And she's also a ghost hunter, and she has her own like YouTube channel where she posts videos about ghost hunting. And so she decides she's going to figure out all these mysteries and find a ghost in this town. Little does she know, she's going to be stalked by a demon. And it's so good. It's so good. So, as you probably guessed, this is a demon romance. And it was so fantastic. It's scary in parts. It is super sexy in parts. It just, I couldn't put it down. I loved it so much. Everyone should read this book. I promise you, you will not hate it. And I can't wait to read the second one. I still haven't read it yet because I've had other things going on, but I loved it so much. You need to read it. So I have 3 more books that I don't actually own, so I'll just post the picture here. And the first one is Unhinged by Olney James. Now this one follows Adam and Noah. And the way I think about this in my mind is kind of almost like Umbrella Academy, where this rich, eccentric billionaire goes out and he finds children who display psychopathic tendencies, and he decides that he's going to adopt those children, take them in, and train them to focus those tendencies on bad people versus good people. So he basically trains them to be serial killers, but only of the bad people and not the good people. So rapists, child predators, uh, uh, traffickers, that kind of thing. And so Adam is one of these children that was adopted. And Noah is the son of one of these men that Adam has killed. And so Noah decides he's going to kill Adam to get revenge for his father. But it ends up unraveling this whole mystery, and uh, this story was so good. I have not read the rest of the books in the series. I have had them, but I just have not read them, among other things. But I can't wait to. This story definitely had me on the edge of my seat. I couldn't put it down. It was just so not heartwarming because it's not in that realm, but to watch Adam kind of break down and realize that he does have some feelings, at least for Noah, and it just, especially because you get like sad points in the story where Noah finds out that things might not have necessarily been what he thought they were with his father. So good. So good. One I have is Push by Nyla K. Now, this one I was not planning on reading because I don't know. This one just sounded a little too far out of there for me, and I don't know why because it's not that crazy, but it just I don't know. But I ended up picking up randomly, and this one follows Ben, who is like your typical average Joe. He goes to work, he comes home, he has a wife named Jessica and a daughter named Haley, I believe, and like he's just your typical almost middle-aged man who um, is like going about his life, and then the holidays come and his daughter brings her boyfriend home for Thanksgiving, and her boyfriend's name is Ryan. Little does Ben know that by the end of that trip, he and Ryan will have started an affair. And this story, uh, I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. So, this is a daughter's boyfriend relationship, but it's not just it ends up being like male, male, female, because not only does the dad have a relationship with the boyfriend, but the mom also ends up having a relationship with the boyfriend. And it just, it's so good. It's so good. Now, I will say, it is cheating in here, at least for the first like third or so of the book. It is cheating. Ben and Ryan are in like a solo affair relationship until Ben eventually like comes clean and tells his wife, and things progress from there. So if you don't like cheating, you might not like this. But like I said, it's not throughout the whole book. Um, but it was so good, and it was so emotional because they aren't they aren't like young kids getting together. They are adults. And so the fact that they do take the time to like talk about what's happening and um, figure out what their next steps are and that kind of thing. And also, they do, just like any other human, they do make mistakes and they do mess up and have trial and error. And I love that aspect of it. So this was something that I truly, truly enjoyed reading, and I couldn't put it down. So the last book I'm going to talk about are The Torn and Bound Duet by Nikki Ash and Kay Webster. And these follow Drew, Brayden, Mia, and Ash. And in this duet, you start off with Ash, who is basically, he feels like a failure in his father's eyes. And so he decides he's going to go out of his way to flaunt his gayness and mess up wherever he can. And that's pretty much what he does. And then you have Mia, who's his best friend, and Mia has always had a crush on Ash, but Ash has kind of never really had a crush on Mia. Not in the sense that he would pay attention to it, like, yeah, he thinks she looks good, and yeah, blah blah blah, but he's never thought to pursue that relationship because he's always thought of himself as gay. And then you have Drew, who is the new hockey coach in this school because they're all going to this one college. And Drew is the new hockey coach, and he used to be a pro hockey player, but he's recently moved back to his hometown, and nobody really knows why he's moved back or why he quit playing, but they're all kind of just seeing what he's going to do. And then you have Brayden, and Brayden is the star of the hockey team at this school, and Drew and Brayden used to be best friends until Drew left, and you kind of get all that backstory. So it's a lot going on between all four of these characters, and they all have singular relationships with each other as well as one big group relationship. So this duet had a lot of moving parts, but I felt like it was so well done in how it explained why everyone had feelings for everyone. And I feel like sometimes when you have like a polyamorous relationship, that's not, I feel like sometimes when you have a polyamorous relationship, they don't always explain why everyone actually wants to be with everyone else. Like, you're like, oh, here's this one relationship, and oh, there's this one relationship, and then we're just gonna mash them together, and that's just how it's gonna be. But it doesn't always make sense to why everyone is with everyone else. And so I feel like this duet did a good job in that, and that's what made it one of my favorite series of last year, and I really enjoyed it. Alright, so now you have heard about all my favorite recent Taboo books, and I hope you go out and you read some of them. As usual, I'll have all of those books linked down below. And yeah, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe if you want it, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.